Hello all, and welcome to the most dramatic horror series of all time. Saw is one of the most well-known sagas with a mostly negative track record, but with the release of Saw X, we're looking at the start of a golden age. This movie was released only a few weeks ago and is arguably the greatest Saw movie ever made, and seems to be the introduction of a brand new series. Nobody seems to really know where this series will go, but that's what we're here for. With us here at Rem Games HQ being true Saw fanatics, we're going to try and predict these next few Saw movies. So hold your breath, reverse your bear traps, and let's start the clock. The Saw series is comprised of 10 movies, 2 video games, and 1 comic, but we don't really talk about those 3, so let's just forget about them. In this series, we follow John Kramer, who tries to make people wrong their rights by creating elaborate tests where they must choose to live or die. Throughout his years, he gained more and more disciples. Amanda Young, a trap victim with a murderous side, Detective Mark Hoffman, a man who while trying to catch the Jigsaw killer ended up working with him, Lawrence Gordon, he's a doctor.
I'm a doctor.
And Logan Nelson, no one cares about him. These 5 characters made the name Jigsaw one that would frighten anyone in this universe. Just from the idea that Jigsaw was after you would be enough to set you back on the right path. Now, this series is full of elaborate twists and turns, soap opera-esque scenarios, and lots of blood. With a series this big on twist reveals, it's going to be very hard to predict the next few movies, but I think we know Saw well enough to at least try. First things first, we have to very quickly freshen Saw 10 in our minds. Of course, spoilers for Saw X ahead. We start with John Kramer hearing that he has very little time to live. When he finds a member of his cancer support group active and healed, they tell him about these people who were able to help him with a simple procedure. John researches them later that night and makes an appointment down in Mexico. Once there, it seems that everything goes perfectly until he discovers that it was nothing but a scam. In anger, he calls up Mark Hoffman to help locate these people and gets the help of Amanda Young to collect them. He creates individual traps for each, but all in one area. Nobody succeeds in their test except for Gabriella. However, Cecilia had some tricks up her sleeve. Parker, the person who was supposed to be getting treated before John, turned out to be Cecilia's partner in both life and in crime, and ended up getting John locked into his own trap before finishing Gabriella off. But you never underestimate John Kramer because he had a failsafe. When Cecilia and Parker tried to take their money, it started their own test, which stopped the contraption controlling John's. While it was probably possible for both Cecilia and Parker to survive if they worked together, Cecilia remained the only victor locked in the upper office. We finally end the movie with John and Amanda successfully leaving with Carlos before we get a mid-credit sequence with the main man himself, Detective Mark Hoffman, in the main room itself, gross stinky bathroom. Let's all give it up for gross stinky bathroom. This movie is very different from our previous 9. The mood of Saw is changing. It's getting more personal. And while it has always been somewhat personal with the entirety of Saw 6 and the test in Jigsaw involving the man who caused the death of Kramer's nephew, this is a different level. John is actively involved in these new tests, but not as a lifeless body, more to watch from inside the test, talking to them, and even yelling at them. Now that we have the mood down, we can start talking about the next movie. Well, probably the next few movies. Saw, like most movies, and really all media nowadays, is somewhat separated into trilogies. Whether it's Star Wars, Mortal Kombat, Lord of the Rings, or even the Umbrella Academy graphic novels, trilogies are all the rave with the kids. Saw follows a very similar trilogy idea depending on how you group the movies. No matter what, Saw always starts with the John Kramer trilogy. These are movies 1, 2, and 3. They follow John up until his death. The next few movies can be grouped in one of 2 ways. You can either separate them as 2 trilogies or as 1 tetralogy and 2 standalone films. If you separate them into 2 trilogies, then you'll have movies 4, 5, and 6 in one, and movies 7, 8, and 9 in the other. The first of these two trilogies would be the Hoffman era up until his escape from the jaws of death. Even though his era technically ends at movie 7, some people group movies 7, 8, and 9 as the fall of Saw. 3 disappointing movies back to back, from a dream sequence trap with Mark becoming a slasher killer, to a secret fourth apprentice that never does anything important, to the Chris Rock take on Saw, which was, well, it didn't slap. I'm so sorry, that joke is so old now and didn't deliver well at all. Let's just pretend I never said that, alright? Cool, moving on. If you were to separate these movies into one tetralogy, Saws 4, 5, 6, and 7 would be grouped together as the Hoffman era, and Saws 8 and 9 would be kept separate, with Saw 9 barely even being a Saw movie at all. No matter how you group these movies, they all loosely follow the trilogy/saga idea, meaning if there will be a Saw 11, there will also most likely be a Saw 12. But first, we have to confirm that a Saw 11 is at least being thought of. Just from watching Saw 10, it doesn't really make it known that there will be a sequel. It ends with a nice resolution, and our mid-credit scene makes a cool callback, bringing Hoffman back to test the one person they never did anything with during the movie, set back in the old classic bathroom. At first glance, this doesn't seem to build up to a next movie, but instead it feels like a fun extra story about John Kramer. However, a tweet from one of the Saw X writers, Josh Stolberg, very excitedly reveals a Saw 11. Sorry, Saw 11. This isn't the only reference to a Saw movie either. Producer Oren Cools mentions ideas for another Saw movie in an interview with Comic Book. Now that we have this Saw 11 reveal, we can definitely try and predict what this movie will be. But like we mentioned before, trilogies are so common that they're almost standard practice at this point, so we should also assume that there will be a Saw 12. Like we mentioned earlier, the mood of Saw is changing, and if the same producers and writers of Saw X are going to be working on Saw 11, it will most likely follow this same personal mood. This means we are going to focus more on the individual instead of just the traps or the police. We can also discern this through the tone at which they discuss the movie. Before Saw X came out, the behind the scenes was released. Everyone that was interviewed was very excited about this new direction that Saw is taking. We can see this exact same excitement in Josh Stolberg's tweet about Saw 11. Now, does this mean that Saw 11 will also focus very personally on John Kramer? I don't think so. There's a few main things that tell me that this next movie will not be focusing solely on John. First things first, the only reason this movie was able to really focus on John in the first place is because of how personal this test was. These people gave him hope for survival and then stripped it away. Now John truly can face and understand that he is not going to survive this. Because of that, it is very hard to do another movie focusing solely on him. To really help us out here, we're going to go back to the Oren Cools interview with Comic Book. In this interview, he says something quite interesting. When talking about Saw 11 compared to Saw 10, he said that, "For us, we do have ideas for the next one, we haven't put pen to paper yet. But this is his story. We really wanted it to be John Kramer's story and tell a John Kramer story." The use of the word "but" in between these two sentences indicates some sort of contrast. The former sentence discusses Saw 11, and the latter sentence discusses Saw 10. Saw 10 is all about John, so using this, we can gather that Saw 11 will differ from this concept. But if this next movie isn't about John, then who will it be about? Well, throughout the movie, we got subtle hints about Amanda's story without spending too long on it. We got these hints through her interactions with other characters. She would cry when thinking about John dying, or show mercy on Gabriella. If you are familiar with Amanda's story, you'll remember that Amanda used to be addicted to drugs, the same way that Gabriella is, so through the knowledge of her experiences, she is showing mercy on Gabriella. With these subtle hints to Amanda's story, it may show that the next movie will focus much more on her. But she isn't the only disciple reintroduced in this film. In this movie, John Kramer calls Mark Hoffman before we see him revealed at the very end. With this reveal of Hoffman came a lot of enthusiasm. The Saw Twitter account posted this tweet only 1 week after the movie was released in theaters. This also spoiled this moment for my partner, so I'll never forgive you, Saw. Alright, fine, I forgive you, but I'm still annoyed. Now, this tweet is welcoming Hoffman back to Saw. If this tweet was being excited that Hoffman was shown as a cameo in Saw, then this wouldn't really be welcoming him back, but instead excited about a simple cameo. This suggests that Hoffman will most likely be in Saw 11. We won't be just focusing on Amanda, but also Hoffman. This could make a full movie. Hoffman and Amanda have a long history. These two disciples have one hell of a rivalry. From the beginning, they were always out to get each other. We see moments where Hoffman and Amanda constantly argue in front of John, and it gets to the point where Hoffman causes Amanda's death. These two characters have quite a rivalry, and one that we haven't really explored. We only ever got big picture ideas that these two characters don't like each other, and we see the main moments that greatly affected them, but that's all we ever really got to see. So I think we have enough to be able to predict what Saw 11 will look like. Due to this movie seemingly being written by the same two writers, we will spend a lot of time on the individual characters and their relationships. However, we're going to move away from John Kramer and instead focus on the rivalry between Amanda Young and Mark Hoffman. This will most likely take place between late 2005 and 2006, at a time where John Kramer is still alive. We will go into exact timelines and explain why we are using these years in a later video. We will most likely see how Mark gets stirred on Amanda and how Amanda tries to manipulate John into distrusting Mark. We'll see the distress that this causes John, and we'll most likely see Mark and Amanda actively trying to cause each other's deaths. Instead of focusing on John Kramer, this movie will most likely focus on those two accomplices. Saw 12 is a hard movie to predict. With the way that Saw likes to create these twists, we can't be confident enough to already make a comment on it. With heavy speculation, we can probably say that one of the other two disciples will get involved, maybe even see something about Carlos. We'll step away from the individual stories of John, Mark, and Amanda and probably focus more on the police again, maybe even bringing back Special Agent Strom from Saws 4 to 6. But again, this movie is still so far out there that it's hard for us to really predict anything. But with that said, those are our predictions for the future of Saw. Once again, predictions are very hard to get correct, so there will most likely be many parts of these theories that are wrong. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to come back to this video after these movies are released and let us know how we did with these predictions. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe. There will be more Saw videos coming later down the line, so make sure to ring that bell to get notified of those uploads. Comment down below if you have any information that could either prove or disprove this theory. Once again, this is still just a theory, so it can always be disproven later when we learn more information. If you want to talk to my team and I directly, make sure to join our Discord or check out our subreddit. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.